Hello and welcome to CLEA'S World. I am Clea, and today I would like to share with you more of the information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH hypnosis session. I'll be reading from a transcript of the session, and when I refer to Lorrayne, I'm speaking of my practitioner who's asking me questions I prepared in advance of the session. And when I refer to me, I'm referring to myself under hypnosis, which means the answers are coming from the 25th. Before I start reading, I would like to thank you as always for subscribing, liking, and commenting on this video. I love reading all your comments. As you know, I respond to all of them and they just make me happy. So thank you for that. All right, let's jump in here. Lorrayne. Clea says, I still have trouble wrapping my mind around the fact that the higher self can behave certain ways, even though it knows all. For example, when we talk about essences that want to experience a certain reality after death, you said that if they believe in certain ideas, like there being a light they have to go through, they will experience it. So it seems that we can believe ideas that are not real, even in between lives at higher self level. You told us certain things are not available for download unless allowed within the matrix. But this seems to go beyond that concept because we are talking about ideas that are already available within the matrix and that not every higher self adopts. We have the idea that we play the game on a planet because we have amnesia, but it seems that even the higher self forgets when it's in the matrix and pretends that certain things are real, even though in the 25th, it knows that they are not. For example, in the last session, you said, behind the scenes, all our higher selves are struggling. We're all struggling, and that's why a lot of resistance comes up, because we're dealing with a lot. But why is the higher self struggling when it knows all? Along the same lines, you said that all of us are doing the work of realizing that we create our reality, even if some don't consciously want to know it. But if we don't consciously want to know something and the higher self already knows it, then at what level are we doing this work behind the scenes? Is there a conscious us with very limited knowledge, a higher self that knows all, in a third state in between that knows more than we consciously do, but still wants to play the game? And Lorrayne's comment was, really good question. This was definitely a point of confusion to me, so I'm glad I asked it because the 25th did a good job of explaining, at least in my opinion. So I want to share the answer with you. All right, me. Yes, so we understand where this confusion comes from. We like things to be black and white here. So we believe that we have, again, us in 3D reality. They are very limited in our knowledge and in what we allow ourselves to know, because we do want to pretend this is real, and therefore we want to live by these limited rules. That's the fun of a board game, is that you have rules and you follow them. Now, in opposition to this, we think of the highest self, which knows all, and therefore we're like, okay, I'm either struggling at a conscious level or I know all at the higher self level. So when the 25th tells us, no, we're struggling at the higher self level, we think, wait, hold on a minute. And they were laughing here. How's that possible? The higher self already knows what we're doing here. We're playing the game. None of this is real. We're taking it down. Moving on. It's what it is. Here's what we want to say again. The higher self, the reason we set up the matrix is to have fun. What it means is to believe that it's real. It does not mean that the higher self has amnesia. The higher self does not have amnesia. The higher self is always in the 25th. It does not forget itself. However, the higher self might be struggling. And this is what we're referring to specifically. It might be struggling to get certain information through to us. Might be struggling. And again, we don't say struggling as in it's difficult from a 3D perspective. We mean to say that the higher self has certain interests, certain priorities, certain goals for itself. And there is always this discrepancy or this distance between the higher self and how we want to play the game at this level, which again, we are the higher self, but we're the higher self focused on a certain reality, within the matrix, basically. So that's where this comes across. So for example, when we say we're all doing this work in the background, is it the higher self that needs to do the work of knowing that this is not real, that we create our reality? The higher self knows we create our reality. The higher self is creating our reality right now. What we mean to say is that the higher self is deciding, is getting information to us at a conscious level. That's why we're here, to get some information at a conscious level. And based on For example, we already talked about the personality of the NPC, or the fact that the NPC, the body, or the higher self in this incarnation has certain plans for us. We had plans for us for how we wanted this to go. Our higher self might be struggling in reconciling these things in terms of how do we get this information across? How much information am I going to allow across? How much information can my NPC take? How much information can I get through certain levels of work, considering the personality of this NPC? That's what we're talking about. So when we say, again, we are struggling to consciously become aware of this information, we said, for example, there are people like you who are doing certain types of work, want to know certain things. This is your interest. This has always been your interest. You align with your interests. That's why the veil is so thin for you. There are no big issues, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that from an emotional perspective, you're still human. Doesn't mean from an emotional perspective, you'll be able to handle everything that the higher self knows. So we're not going to have the veil fall before we go through to the earth. We already discussed this several times. But at the same time, you're perfectly okay with the idea that we're getting this information. This is totally okay with me. This is so obvious to me. This resonates with me. I know I'm my higher self already, so there's nothing odd about any of this. There's nothing that I really want to proactively resist. Whereas somebody else who also has aligned with New Earth, but we already said, for example, there are people who are going to New Earth who have had this thing. Now, what would it take? Think of it. From a conscious perspective, this person would be so different from you in so many ways. We are talking at 3D level. We're talking the experiences this person wants to have in terms of what they want to know. They want to try, okay? At the higher self level, you're exactly the same. You are one, even more than being the same. And they were laughing. So this person would not generally have the same interests in knowing what you know. Will put up a lot more resistance. Might not even want to know that the government is not our friend. Now, of course, because of the alignment with New Earth, a lot of this has percolated in. But they might have done things that were very 3D. We said CLEA was very 3D until not too long ago. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the whole point of being here, is to be 3D. And so what we mean to say is that the higher self in this particular situation might be struggling with letting certain stuff become conscious. They might not want to deal with certain things. And we are all struggling in that sense behind the scenes in terms of, we already said, these are the two main things we cannot handle at 3D level. We cannot handle the full knowledge of what's happened on this planet. We cannot. And therefore, we want to keep this veil in place. The veil might look different to you than it does to somebody else. Now, the external veil looks pretty similar for everybody. Still looks like bad things are happening, what we consider to be bad things. Like we talked about, for example, this thing being added to the childhood schedule, that kind of thing. These things keep coming up. Why? Because we want them to come up. But at the same time, we might be struggling at a personal level because we are very emotional and we don't want certain things to come through. And this is the case with everyone to a more or lesser degree. Now, Claire, for example, is chosen because we said for her own personal interests, she wants to accelerate this work. She has chosen to become aware of certain things. We send her dreams regularly. And even then, she does struggle with some of these dreams. We talked about this. There are more dreams that she wants to ask us about, but this makes her aware of the fact that there is a lot behind the scenes that we don't want to know. They will really get very resistant when it comes to these things and we become very emotional about. This is what we mean by we are struggling behind the scenes. Now, there might be somebody who doesn't even remember their dreams. And why do they not remember their dreams? Because they don't want to know. Because behind the scenes, they're also struggling emotionally. This is what we mean by you're struggling behind the scenes. We're not aware of a lot of the emotions. That's why we stay so close and we want to keep this game in place, this veil in place, the shell in place, because it's so important for us to try to protect our emotions to a greater or lesser degree. It is so important. It's paramount. We believe we would melt. We know we wouldn't from a 3D perspective, from a human perspective, be able to handle what's happened here. And so this is what we mean by behind the scenes, we are struggling. We have a lot of emotions that we all want to be aware of. And we are doing work at the higher self level, meaning the higher self is pushing some information through that we don't necessarily want to know or want to remember on a conscious level. That's what we talk about. So there is no third entity in between. To answer the specific question that was asked, there is no third part of us. There's the higher self, which is really us in a human body. That's it, if you want to think of it. There's really just one. But if you want to think of yourself as a body on this planet, having a certain experience, and the higher self imbuing this body with information, then you can think of it as there are two levels, but certainly not three. Lorrayne, thank you. Okay, there is this intelligence at play. How can energy be so intelligent that everything was created from it? Do you know how this works? How Source is capable of creating all of this, and therefore we're capable too? It takes so much imagination to create what we have. How is this possible? Where did this imagination come from? And is creation about knowing how to use codes, how to manipulate energy to bend reality? How did Source figure this out? What is Source really? How does Source come about? Reality shouldn't even exist. Where does existence come from? How does it happen where there is no before and after? And I have to say, the reason I come up with these questions is because sometimes I'm just so in awe. I cannot even imagine. And I'm trying to get more information from the 25th in terms of, now that I know that there is information that is not allowed within the matrix, I'm trying to poke and see if I can get something new out of them. I know that they will not give me anything that we are not meant to know, but we won't find out unless we ask. So here we go. So this is the answer from the 25th. Yeah, and then we're laughing. Yeah. So we understand how baffling, how enormous of a thought it is to try to conceive of Source when you are in a 3D existence. We understand this. We have said, of course, Source has always been. Source always is. There is no past. Source is Source. It never came to be. It just is. Because it just is, it will be forever. We've already said that there is only eternity. Everything is energy, as you well know. So this imagination, energy is creative. Energy creates because it is creative. And therefore, how can we, and then we're laughing, we are laughing not to minimize, we're laughing because we understand. And it's even difficult to wrap our human minds around this concept, but energy is everything. So everything is, we said, a figment of our imagination. Really, it's a figment of Source's imagination. We are Source, so really of our imagination. The reason we are capable of this imagination is because we're creative. Energy is creative. Source is creative. And therefore, in our creativity, we always do new things. We always create new things. We've said already, we've already spoken about the fact that Source has created many, many different entities, just like the 25th. It has created angels, has created what you refer to as other worlds, other parallel realities. Source creates all the time as Source. And we happen to be focused on this particular game, which is the matrix, the multiverse, because we enjoy it. But if we didn't enjoy it anymore, very simply, we take the whole thing down in a split second. It doesn't take a long time. It will very likely create something else because we are creative. And we're showing Clea, we're showing her this image, which is the same image she saw during one of her plant medicine experiences, where we see it's almost like lava with little bubbles that go up, that comes up here and there, because it's so boiling that it creates bubbles that pop up. This is how it is. It's always alive. This energy is always alive. And because it's alive, it just does stuff. It multiplies, it expands. It's just happy. They were laughing here. It's a happy energy, if you want to think of it that way. It's an excitable energy. It's a creative energy. It's what it is. So we understand from a 3D perspective. We think of this and we say, how is this even possible? It's so intricate. It's so real here. How is it even possible to think of all these details, do all these things? Because the energy has no limitation. And therefore, whatever it thinks of, it will envision things that are huge by our human standards. Energy is all powerful. It's everything. And so is it a matter of using codes? We use codes because they're memories. It's know-how, really. However, every essence knows how to manipulate energy. We are all one if one knows it. If Source knows how to do it, we know how to do it. So is it a matter of codes in terms of, oh, you got to know the secret formula is 3 + 2 + 4, and we're laughing. And if you don't know it, nothing is going to happen? No. We use codes as memory triggers that it's almost like if you were on a SWAT team and you have codes that you use to understand each other and know what you got to do and know that you have to go to a certain plan. It's almost like you're on a football team when you have codes that you call for games, for certain strategies you're going to use in the game. That's all it is. It's just a trigger to remember. This is what we need to be doing now, or this is what we can use, not because you need codes. Energy is energy. Our intention is instantaneous and it's all powerful. So if you want to manifest a certain reality, it's even faster than a thought, really, because we don't even have to go through the process. We know it and it's happening. We want something and it's happening. And so we're not quite sure what else to add. So source has always been, again, source is, we're not quite sure how else to explain this. We understand that Clea is very much in awe of the greatness, truly, of this existence. And it's hard for us to think of, we think in very linear terms here. So for us, there is always a before and after. So we think there was nothing before. In fact, you see it in your science. You see there was darkness before, and then there was the Big Bang. That's not really how things work. Now, of course, we know they're referring to, we're already spoken about how scientists go about these things. They're referring to really the fact that we've created the matrix. But of course, they have to put all the data around it, et cetera, et cetera. But they also think that when there was darkness, there was nothing. But there is no nothing. There cannot be nothing. Now, of course, they talk about dark matter or whatnot. We've actually talked about dark matter before. But the truth is, this is how we think in 3D terms, which is there has to be a before and after, or there has to be the opposite of something. There is no opposite of energy. Everything is energy. Therefore, there is no before and after. Energy is. And because energy is, we are. And everything else we are imagining and we are creating out of energy. Because we know we are energy, therefore we know how to manipulate energies. It's that easy to us. We manipulate energy all the time. We forget we do. Like right now, we're in 3D. We think we're all here. Meanwhile, we're manipulating energy as we speak. We're doing it right now. So yeah, we don't know how much more we can explain about this because we understand that the question comes from, again, a 3D perspective of how we look at things in human terms, as opposed to the fact that energy just is. And when you switch your focus to being in the 25th, you realize that it becomes so obvious, which is, it is, we are, that's it, there's nothing more. And they were laughing. And because we are, we create things. We want to try things. And this is what we have tried, what we are trying right now, what we're enjoying right now is this matrix. Well, I'm going to stop here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought that especially the last answer from this one was quite interesting. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.